The first sound was silence, the kind that hums in your bones when a phone refuses to ring for years. Then came the scrape of paper against wood, a white envelope crossing my coffee table, like a ghost with my name on its lips. Hope rose sharp and dizzy dread curled behind it like a shadow. I told myself not to tremble. I failed. After 3 years of stubborn quiet, the past had found my address, and I was about to let it in. My apartment had the clean, efficient neatness of a life designed to prove a point. I had left home to chase my own future and built one with stubborn precision early runs through the park coffee at 7 a.m., a company launched on borrowed audacity and sleepless faith. My father called it betrayal. My grandfather called it potential. Somewhere between their verdicts, I became a woman who measured progress by invoices paid and bridges burned. The bridge to my father, Robert, was the one I tried not to look at. Every Sunday, the hour that used to belong to his calls arrived like a missed heartbeat. I poured more coffee and typed harder. It never worked. The envelope lay in the center of the table, expensive, stock, weightless authority. The return address was his old P.O. box. I knew it, as well as I knew the smell of pine in his workshop, the way sawdust clung to our shoes when I was little, and he taught me to sand the edges smooth, always smooth, because splinters come for the impatient. He remembers me, I whispered, and the whisper felt like a door that might open if I pressed my ear against it hard enough. Wait! The voice cut cleanly across the room. Arthur, my grandfather, stepped out of the doorway with the steady presence of someone who was never rushed unless he wanted the world to notice. Billionaire was what they called him in headlines, but in my life, he was the man who had quietly backed my first pitch deck and told me failure was tuition, not a tombstone. His eyes, normally amused even when they were not tender, narrowed now. "Don't open that, not yet. Look closer." I bristled out of reflex. He had believed in me when my father would not. It made me want to repay the faith with movement. But Arthur's gaze pinned the air between us until I set my fingers on the envelope instead of inside it. I studied the script. My name perfect, as if it had been traced against glass. The D in Dad with the elegant slant I remembered from grocery lists and sticky notes on the fridge. Everything was right, and something was wrong. Arthur took the envelope and turned it under the light. He didn't frown, he cataloged. "The stamp is nothing," he murmured, bulk forgettable. He touched the letters with the pad of his thumb, gentle as a jeweler weighing a stone. Robert's writing leans to the right. Wrist he broke as a boy. This is upright, and the pressure your father wrote like he wanted the paper to remember. These strokes are light, too careful. He met my eyes. It's an imitation, a very good one, but a mask all the same. Hope dropped through me like a floor giving way. I wanted to argue to protect the fragile, ridiculous longing that had kept me company on too many Sunday afternoons. But once he said it, the truth was loud. The paper was wrong, too crisp, too expensive for a man who loved ordinary stationery with faint flecks of pulp like snow. The script was wrong, machine clean where memory lived crooked. The scent was wrong. No echo of his workroom, that faint tang of varnish and dust. I thought of splinters. I thought of impatience. "Let's open it," Arthur said, and the softness left his voice like a tide pulling back from rock. For a heartbeat, I saw the man who negotiated with silence until it confessed profit. I slit the flap with my thumbnail and slid out a single sheet. No hand had written it. A printer had exhaled it onto the page. The greeting was cold. The plea was colder. "Dearest Ava." The letter began, and then it asked for money. $50,000 wired urgently to a numbered account with a warning not to call. 3 years rendered as leverage. Love signed as a closing argument. Your loving father, Robert. My voice was a brittle instrument. I read the letter aloud and felt each sentence take aim at the tender places, my guilt, my pride the hollow where stubbornness had nested for 3 years. Arthur didn't need to read it. He understood the architecture of scams the way sailors understand weather. No personal detail, he said. No reference to the dog, to the crooked fence gate, to my mother's rain boots, still hanging by the back door years after she was gone. No nickname. No time. Just hunger, wrapped in urgency. Someone knew our history. That was the part that made the room tilt. The letter wasn't generic. It was precise. It used the silence like a pry bar. "They know about us," I said, and the words came out small. Arthur's jaw tightened. "They know, and they're betting you'll pay to rewrite the past. We won't let them." I breathed and found a different kind of heat. The letter was no longer a message. It was evidence. The hope I had been nurturing like a houseplant on a north window shriveled, and something harder took its place. In the ruined quiet that followed, the same name rose in both our minds. Susan, my father's ex-wife. Elegance on the outside, arithmetic on the inside, and always a ledger for other people's hearts. She had resented me for refusing the life that kept her in silk and invitations. She had been a steady presence in his orbit, whispering tradition like a script she never intended to memorize. If this is her, I said, she knows the fight, the 3 years, the Sundays that hurt. She knows what to imitate. Arthur nodded once. Then we strip away the mask. I'll call a contact, start with the paper trail. You talk to your people, follow the money. The clock on my microwave flipped to 8 p.m. outside the window, and the city kept moving, indifferent and smug. I set the letter flat on the table between us. "I'll have a friend look into the wallet," I said, "and I'll bait the hook." Arthur's mouth tilted, not a smile exactly, but an acknowledgement. In his world, plans spoke louder than feelings. In mine tonight, they would have to do both. The game had begun not for profit, but for something harder to count. I picked up my phone and typed a message to the number on the page, voice trembling but steady on the screen, and watched 3 dots pulse like a held breath. The reply came at 8:12 p.m., too quickly, too neat. "Thank you, sweetheart. I knew I could count on you. Meet me tomorrow at 10 a.m. at the Bluefinch Cafe. We can talk." The words tried to mimic affection, but I could taste the artificial sweetness. Arthur read it over my shoulder and said nothing. He didn't have to. We both knew no father would ask his daughter for $50,000 and then pick a neutral cafe for the reunion. This wasn't family. It was fishing bait. That night, sleep didn't visit. I kept hearing my father's voice the way I remembered it, half stern, half proud, telling me that shortcuts make weak foundations. The irony burned. Somewhere out there, someone was counterfeiting his love letter to me. I spent hours combing through digital traces with my old college friend Matteo, a cybersecurity consultant who owed me more than a few favors. The wallet number linked to a proxy in Eastern Europe, rerouted through at least 3 layers of encryption. But there was one clue, an IP ping that originated not far from my father's old estate, redirected through a domestic VPN. It wasn't proof, but it was a scent. By 9:30 a.m. the next morning, the Bluefinch Cafe was already busy with the city's midweek hum, laptops, open espresso machines hissing. Arthur sat 2 tables behind me, disguised in a navy jacket, and reading a financial paper he wasn't actually reading. I wore neutral colors hair pulled back my nerves, wrapped tight beneath a calm mask. I had texted my father that I would bring cash for a partial transfer. If Susan wanted a payday, she would come herself. At 10:03 a.m., the bell over the cafe door chimed. She entered exactly as I remembered her polished, graceful wearing a coat that whispered money she no longer had. She spotted me instantly and performed surprise with Oscar-worthy skill. "Ava." "Oh, my dear, it's been ages." Her voice slid through the air like honey over glass. She took my hands before I could stop her, her smile tender and false. "You look wonderful." "Let's skip the warm-up," I said, my voice low. "You sent the letter." Her grip loosened, but she didn't flinch. "Letter, I don't know what you mean." I leaned closer, eyes steady. The one asking for $50,000. The one pretending to be from my father. You forged his handwriting, you used his P.O. box, you copied every detail down to the slant of his D. Susan's expression flickered, a microsecond of panic smoothed by practiced control. Ava, your father really is struggling. He didn't want to come himself, but he asked me to reach out. He's embarrassed, that's all. Embarrassed, I echoed, bitterness rising. He's not the one with gambling debts registered to an offshore account under your alias. Her face blanched, then hardened. You don't know what you're talking about. Arthur's paper rustled behind me. My phone buzzed softly, a text from his investigator confirmed. Susan Miller, heavy casino losses, fake crypto wallets traced to her name. The evidence was ready. I just had to hold her long enough. You stole from him, didn't you? I pressed. The settlement, the business shares, the savings gone. And when that wasn't enough, you decided to use me. The mask finally cracked. You think you're better than me, she hissed. You left your father when he needed you most. I was the one who stayed. I was the one who took care of him. You took care of his bank account, I shot back. You drained him dry. Her voice rose, drawing curious glances from nearby tables. You have no proof. Actually, Arthur's voice cut in, calm and devastating we do. He stepped forward, folding his paper, and placed a folder on the table. Inside were printouts, handwriting comparisons, account records, security footage. 2 plainclothes officers approached from the corner. Badges discreetly flashed. The cafe's hum dimmed as Susan's face went slack. Susan Miller, one officer said you're under arrest for fraud and identity theft. She tried to stand, knocking over her chair. You can't do this. I didn't. But the words drowned beneath the metallic snap of handcuffs. Customers whispered. Phones rose to record. As they led her out, she looked at me, her eyes a storm of rage and humiliation. He'll never forgive you for this, she spat. You've killed what little was left between you. The door closed behind her. The cafe noise returned, hesitant at first, then steady. I sat back trembling, not with victory, but with exhaustion. The adrenaline that had carried me this far ebbed, leaving only a hollow ache. Arthur sat across from me. You did well, he said softly. But this isn't the end, Ava. It never ends clean. I know, I said. I have to see him. He nodded. Go. He needs the truth from you, not from a report. The drive to my father's house felt longer than the 3 years that had stretched between us. The old oak tree still shaded the driveway, the rose bushes still climbed the fence like they had when I was a child. But the house itself looked tired. I rang the doorbell and the chime hit like a memory I wasn't ready to feel. When he opened the door, the world tilted. My father, once broad-shouldered and confident, stood smaller, thinner. His hair, once salt and pepper, was now mostly ash. His eyes widened as if seeing a ghost. Ava? He whispered the word, trembling. What are you doing here? We need to talk, I said. My voice almost broke on the second word. He hesitated. If this is about the letter... It's not your letter, Dad, I interrupted. It was Susan. She's been arrested. For a moment, he just stared, the color draining from his face. Then his lips parted, and the dam broke. She took everything he said, voice cracking. The accounts, the house, the business, everything. His body sagged, and I caught him before he fell. Inside the house smelled of dust and regret. We sat at the kitchen table where I had once done homework under his watchful eye. I was so lonely after you left, he confessed, tears streaking the lines on his cheeks. Susan made me feel... needed. She said you'd forgotten me, that success had turned you cold. I swallowed hard. She knew exactly how to use the silence between us. He nodded, eyes closing. I should have known better. I let pride blind me. I pushed you away because I was afraid of being left behind. I never stopped loving you, I said quietly. I just wanted you to see that I could stand on my own. The words hung in the air, fragile but true. Then he reached across the table, his hand finding mine. I see that now, he whispered. And I'm so proud of you, Ava." We sat there for a long time, two people bound by blood, and regret letting the silence become something softer. For the first time in years, it didn't suffocate. It breathed. My father's shoulders, hunched with years of guilt, began to relax. Outside, the roses stirred in the evening wind, their petals brushing the window, like a reminder that beauty could survive neglect. "I didn't know how to reach you," he said finally, voice barely above a whisper. "I tried writing letters, dozens of them. I never sent them. They all sounded wrong, too proud, too weak, too late. My heart ached. 'She found them,' I murmured. 'Susan found your drafts. That's how she copied your handwriting.'" His eyes widened, and for a moment he looked as if the air had been stolen from the room. "Those were private," he said hoarsely. "She took even that. She took everything I said softly, but not this, not us." We stayed like that, hands clasped, the weight of 3 years melting into something bearable. Then I told him everything, the fake letter, the cafe, the arrest. Each revelation landed like a stone in still water, rippling through his face, shock, shame, sorrow, then a deep, quiet anger. When I was finished, he leaned back in his chair, staring at nothing. "She used my love for you," he said, "and your love for me. That's what makes it unforgivable." I nodded, feeling the same hollow burn in my chest. She turned silence into a weapon. His eyes lifted to mine, but we let her. The truth stung. He was right. Our pride had done most of her work for her. I looked at the man who had once been my hero and realized that beneath the guilt, he was still that man. Wiser, now humbled, cracked, but not broken. "We can fix this," I said. "Not the money, not the past, but us." He smiled faintly. "I'd like that." The next few hours unfolded like a fragile beginning. He made tea the way he always had, too strong, no sugar, and we talked. Not like father and daughter trying to win an argument, but like two survivors comparing maps of the same wreck. He told me about the months after I left, the empty dinners, the quiet mornings, the stubborn belief that if he stayed angry long enough, I'd come back out of guilt. I told him about the loneliness of success, the hollow applause, the way every achievement felt like a message I was sending into a void. When I finally rose to leave, he looked up, eyes bright with unshed tears. "Ava," he said softly, "I can't undo what I did, but I want to write you a real letter this time, one that says everything I never did." The words cracked something open inside me. I smiled, and for once, it wasn't forced. "I'd like that, Dad," I said. "More than you know." That night, as I drove back through the quiet city, the lights blurred into ribbons on the windshield. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was running towards something or away from someone. I was simply moving forward, not back. Weeks passed. Susan's arrest made the papers briefly before vanishing beneath louder scandals. My father began to rebuild slowly, carefully, with Arthur's quiet assistance. The empire he had lost would never be what it was, but in its place, something stronger was growing. We spoke every evening at 7 p.m., sometimes for hours, sometimes for minutes, sometimes just to hear each other breathe. The silence that had once been our punishment became our peace. Then one afternoon, a package arrived at my apartment. No return address, just my name written in familiar, imperfect script. My heart skipped. I opened it carefully. Inside was a leather-bound journal, the kind he used to write in when I was little. On the first page, his handwriting leaned slightly to the right, the ink pressed deep into the paper. "My dearest Ava," the letter began. "Words can't erase 3 years, but maybe they can build a bridge where silence once stood. I'm sorry I let pride take your place at my table. You were never a disappointment. You were the proof that everything I taught you worked. I used to think legacy was something built in wood and stone, but it's built in people. You are my legacy, your strength, your compassion, your courage. If you ever doubt that, just read this letter again." Tears blurred the words. I sat there for a long time, the journal open on my lap, feeling something quiet and sacred take root inside me. Forgiveness, I realized, wasn't a single act, it was a practice. Every phone call, every shared dinner, every awkward silence filled with effort instead of pride. Later that week, my father invited me over. He'd been repainting the living room. The walls that once echoed with arguments were now a warm, gentle cream. On the mantel sat a framed photo, me as a child perched on his shoulders, both of us grinning through sawdust. "Thought it deserved a better view," he said, smiling. We spent the evening planning small things, repairs, trips, dinners, simple promises, all achievable. When I left, he hugged me the way he used to, firm and certain. "Thank you for not giving up on me," he said. "I never could," I answered. "Family doesn't quit. We just get lost sometimes." That night, as I looked at the city skyline from my apartment window, the hum of traffic below sounded almost like music. The fake letter that had once been a symbol of manipulation had become a catalyst for everything real. It had broken us open just enough to let the light in. And maybe that's what forgiveness truly is, not erasing the past, but reclaiming it, turning the noise of regret into the quiet of understanding. My father and I had found our way back, not because of a perfect apology, but because we had finally learned how to listen. If this story moved, you don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful family stories like this one. And in the comments, tell me, what would you do if a letter from your past arrived today?